Guys, many people have this perception that the London system is a solid opening, but it's just slow and repetitive. However, if you actually pay attention to what your opponent is doing, what black is doing, rather than let's build the pyramid, the London system pyramid, then you can start to lay certain traps for your opponent, which can land you in winning positions by as early as move 6. So, even up to 2000 elo, many of your opponents will fall into these traps. I'm speaking from experience here. So, after watching this video, I think many of you guys will win games straight out of the opening. So, with that being said, let's get right into it. Okay guys, trap number 1. This is for when your opponent is a Benoni player or a King's Indian player. So, they like to go c5 early on. And this position we can go knight c3. And now they go queen b6 to hit the pawn on b2. So obviously we've moved our bishop away from the c1 square, so away from the defense of the pawn. So how do we defend the pawn in this position? Well, I'll tell you what we don't do. Guys, please do not go rook b1. Do not play rook b1. It's such a miserable looking move. Do not do that. b3 also a terrible move. Do not do that. Instead, we play very sneaky move, pawn to a3. Okay, so why are we playing this move? Well, the reason is because if black is so bold as to take the pawn now, knight a4, and as black you're going to start looking for where you can move your queen. Well, this square is covered by the pawn, this square is covered by the pawn, this square is covered by the bishop, this square is covered by the knight, and this square is covered by the knight. So as black, you're going to start panicking now. You're going to be like, my queen's trapped! Guys, it's only been 6 moves, and the game is over. The game is over. Okay, guys, trap number 2. So this trap is going to arise in the following position. Black goes c5, and black is going to go c5 in a lot of games when he plays at London. But in this position, black brings his bishop outside of the pawn chain, bishop to f5. So c3 is normal. And when black goes e6, go queen a4. And it turns out that right now, if black goes bishop to d6, he actually loses the game on the spot. So there is a move that we have in this position, just one move, that destroys black's position. Now, if you've not seen it before, it's very difficult to find this move. So I'll give you a second. The move is bishop to a6. So, if black takes the bishop, we simply take the knight on c6. Black has to defend the bishop, so he goes king e7. And now, first we throw in the check. And whatever black blocks, you can see that, for example, things can go very bad for black if something like this happens. Knight e5, fork king, fork queen. So, if black does not take the bishop on a6, but instead takes the bishop on f4, we actually do not capture back here. We first throw in bishop takes b7. And the idea is that if you look at the board now, you can spot that there's not 1, not 2, but 3 pieces all under attack. And of course we're going to win back material. So for example, black's best move here is actually to castle. We take the rook, and we take the bishop, and essentially we're going to emerge up an exchange and a pawn. So, also very, very good for us. If black decides not to take any of the pieces, and for example goes rook b8, we just take, and we're just winning. So the engine gives us +4. And turns out that black's best move right now is to play queen a5, and if black does play this move, we're just going to trade, take the bishop, and then after black takes our bishop, we eventually just emerge up a pawn and with a winning position. Okay guys, trap numero 3 is d4, d5, bishop f4. And by the way, you might get this trap in not necessarily this exact position, but a similar position. So oftentimes when black goes bishop d6, we drop the bishop back. So we invite black to trade. If he does trade, we take back with the h pawn. Okay, castles. Now black plays knight to d7. Now this move, there's nothing wrong with this move, but it does disconnect the queen from its bishop. And right now that isn't a problem. Of course, if we take the bishop, he takes with the pawn. But we're going to see in just a moment why that can be a problem. So bishop d3. Now black is preparing to go e5. So we need to prevent this move. So we put our own knight into e5. And of course, black cannot take because there's a fork. So if black now in this position goes c5, we have a winning move. So see if you can find it. And like I say, this trap is not necessarily unique to this specific position, but you can recognize the trap when you see it. So in this position, we can play the move knight takes f7. Gambit, my legacy. So the idea is that, okay, the knight is attacking both the queen and the bishop. Of course, black has to take the knight. But when black takes the knight, we take the bishop. And since the pawn is moved and the queen is no longer looking at the bishop, no longer guarding the bishop, we basically win a pawn, and black has no compensation really because we have the bishop pair and black's king is in a muddle. So, okay guys, so for this next trap, I think it's slightly more sophisticated, but I do think it is instructive nonetheless. So we get the following position. Now, last time we saw the move bishop f5. This time we're going to see the move e6. e6. Now bishop d6, and like before, we just drop the bishop back to g3. And okay, black prepares to go e5. So queen e7, looking to go e5. We prevent e5 by moving the knight into the square. And if black goes knight d7 to challenge the knight, we simply trade the other bishop, and then we take on c5. Now, it doesn't seem like it, but we're actually winning in this position. It's not obvious why. It looks like maybe black is even slightly better. However, we do have a tactic. And this tactic is known as the Greek gift sacrifice. We give the bishop away in order to lure the king outside. And the reason this works is because after queen h5 check, king g8 forced, we can take advantage, exploit the fact that the queen is opposite our queen with the move knight e4. And it turns out that wherever black moves his queen, doesn't matter, say queen e7 for example, that after knight g5, it's impossible to stop mate unless you take the knight. So for example, if the rook moves, then we have queen h7 check, checkmate on h8, and f6 doesn't do anything, g6 doesn't do anything, so black is forced to take on g5. So, gentlemen, if black is a Nimzo player, then oftentimes you might get the following type of position. So after c5, let's say knight f3, b6, knight d2. In this particular position, after bishop to b7, we don't play the move c3, which is a typical move. We instead play the move knight to c4. So we're threatening knight d6 check, first of all. Then if black goes d6 to prevent knight d6 check, this is actually a mistake because we take on c5. And if black takes with the b pawn, then we take, of course, the free pawn on d6. And if instead black takes with the d pawn, first we trade queens. And now we have knight to g5. Knight g5 threatening the fork between the king and the rook. And it turns out that after king to e8, black can't defend on f7 simply because there's no pieces to defend the pawn. So we're going to win the pawn and probably the game. So black cannot play d6 Instead, if black goes to d5, then we're also going to get a very nice position after knight to e5. Because in this position, if black plays knight d7 or bishop to e7, which are both very, very natural moves, black will be losing. But let's see why. If bishop to e7, we have the move bishop b5 check, and let's say black blocks with the knight. We simply trade. We trade once, and then once we've traded the knights, we bring the second knight into e5, pressuring the pinned piece, and it turns out that black cannot defend the knight because if bishop to c8, we have the remarkable knight c6 and the queen is trapped. Okay, now let's rewind back to the position earlier. If instead of bishop to e7 now, black can also play knight to d7. Then we play bishop b5 anyway. And the reason we do this is because if black now kicks the bishop away with a6, we can actually ignore this threat. We don't need to. First, we simply don't trade. Now you can pause the video to see what move you would play in this position. But the move right now is knight to g5, because we're inviting black to trade. We're inviting black to take the free bishop. But now we get to take on f7 with the e knight. And we're going to fork the queen, fork the rook. And when the dust settles, we're going to be up in exchange. So queen e7, knight takes h8. And this is going to be winning for us. Alright guys, so that's a wrap for this video. I hope you get to use these traps in your own games in the London system. And otherwise, see you in the next video.